Hello, everybody. I'm Lauren Wilde. I am the host of Awaken podcast, and I'm so excited to have you here. We are on the last day of March 31st of 2025. The moon is in the middle decan of Taurus, and it's time to talk about the astrology of April. So let's go ahead and settle in, make sure that you've got your water and, maybe a warm beverage, your pen, your paper, your thoughts. And I like to always ask people to either grab your phone or your calendar so that you can look back and help track and look for the cycles of self-awareness. All right. So I am Lauren. I am a professional embodied astrologer, meaning that I'm looking through the framework or the lens of astrology to know how to live more fully in my body, in my consciousness, in my awareness, and heal. Right? I'm not just looking for more awareness to just gain awareness. I'm looking for awareness to know how to best be in and live in my body and my awareness. I'm also a manifestation coach. I help people build and reinvent themselves and build visions of how they want to live so they can get off of living life on factory settings and live a life that they truly design and want to embody, want to be in. And then I help people with ancestral rewilding, whether that is actually getting into nature, attuning to the cycles of nature through things like the Celtic Wheel of the Year, or it is things like reparenting the self and tapping into the narratives that get passed down generationally through our mothers and fathers or our birth givers. And that is really like how I try to bridge the three bodies of importance to me, and that is planetary bodies, our ancestral bodies, and our human bodies. So really trying to tap into how we live with and bridge all of these different states of existence and awareness. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this whole content that is April. So April is weird. I'm not going to lie to you guys. We have to kind of backtrack to move forward. This past weekend, we had the solar eclipse in Aries. Y'all have heard me yap about that solar eclipse for well over a year. And what it did is it created both an ending as well as kind of the final beginning of the story that we've been carrying since the first Aries eclipse that was on April the 20th of 2023. That was a total solar eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries. And then we had a total solar eclipse at 8 degrees of Aries this past weekend. And as all things in the divine feminine, there is no beginning, middle, and end. It's a cycle. So what that means is that on March 29th, when we had that solar eclipse in Aries, it was both the capstone, like the ending of the 2-year journey we've been on, as well as like the last 6-month push of that story. So put it into context, I remember I was traveling to a yoga retreat in Florida with one of my beloved favorite facilitators, teachers, and friend. Her name's Karina Mirsky, and she does this really, really beautiful, powerful work of merging IFS parts work and yoga. And she's super profound. So feel free to check her out, Karina Mirsky. But essentially, I remember at that time period telling my best friend while I was getting on the plane, I had to make enough financially to be able to be on my own because I could tell that my relationship at that time was collapsing. And it sure did. It looking back 2 years now, I'm like, it sure did, didn't it? And so what I have been able to recognize, by tracking and embodying this spiritual journey and personal evolution I'm on is that this 2-year period of time was very much about me healing my sense of self as an independent person and being financially capable on my own, but then also healing these wounds of really, really deep codependence that I wasn't aware of, by leaving that toxic relationship and taking on, over half a year of singlehood and celibacy, and really listening to my inner guidance and my spiritual team about when I was supposed to put myself back out into the world to meet people. And when I did, and I listened really, really closely, I met who I believe is my soulmate. He's also a Libra. Our suns are like less than a degree apart. And we met under the Libra solar eclipse. And so I'm still working on like trying to develop how much of that I want to keep private and keep to myself, as well as like how much of that is part of the story that I want to share to inspire other people to listen really deeply to their inner guidance and their spirit teams. But to make long story short, the past 2 years has been this journey of interdependence and financial independence to heal a generational wound that was passed down through my grandmother's lines. If you guys ever have any interest in getting into that kind of work, that is what my group coaching program Awaken is for. It is a blend of ancestral rewilding and journey work and manifestation and astrology and self-awareness. I mean, like it's the coolest thing I've created for sure. But if you're ever interested in that, or you want to have a reading and see what we can find out, make sure you check out the description box below, guys. I'm really working on my visibility and my messaging this year. And so just, check me out. I'm pretty good at what I do, and I'm pretty good at helping to activate the parts of yourself within you so that you can look outward for accountability, but know how to trust yourself within. Okay. So when we look at how this April equinox story is going, remember, again, the divine feminine, there is no ending or beginning. There is life, there is death, there is the in-between, there is life, there's death, there's in-between, there's liminal, right? And that's what the wheel of the year is. And that is how time is looked at through the lens of divine feminine consciousness. The masculine wants to be able to calculate. It wants to know the container. It wants to know when things end and when things begin. And that is why the masculine lens of time is a line. It's linear. But the feminine lens of time is cyclical. And there is no ending or beginning. It is chicken and egg. And it is mystery, because that is the nature of divine feminine consciousness. But remember, there is like this 6-month push. So wherever Aries and Libra are in your natal chart, there is a 6-month push of something that started in spring of 2023 that is trying to be brought into completion by September of 2025. Okay. I would dare say it's a bit of a make or break. Like whatever you're pushing in there, it's a bit of a make or break. Okay. Because we also had an eclipse that was on March 14th. And that was at 25 degrees of Virgo, 23 degrees of Virgo. And that was a total lunar eclipse. So, usually we get somewhere around 6 to 8 eclipses in a nodal axis over 2 years. So far, the 2 Virgo Pisces eclipses have been total lunar eclipses. And so is the first one that's going to be September 2nd of this year, is going to be a total lunar eclipse at 15 degrees Pisces. So that's 3 of those eclipses are total surrenders and letting go. They're karmic release points, things leaving your life. It's a big deal to like not have any solar eclipses for a year. That in that storyline, it just means so much letting go, so much realigning, so much release, so much surrender, so much faith that has to be reconstructed. Especially with Saturn in that mix, which we're going to talk about that here too. But what I want to just kind of pause before we move into this next segment is understanding that there's a final push in some area of your life. If you could stop and you can look at it and you can think about, all right, like what is the thing that is still holding on that I know I need to give my oomph to put my willpower behind? What is that? that's the one thing I want you to focus on in that regard for 6 months, because that storyline is going to be closed and we won't see it again for really and truly another 20 years when the North Node is back in Aries. So, all right, let's go ahead and start to move into the next portion. So we're still on the topic of Aries, guys. Aries is a big player really until 2027. I mean, for a long time, to be fully honest, but especially this spring. And I have been yapping about this for a long time now. And we're here now. Okay. So the reason why is because we had that solar eclipse in Aries. Neptune just moved into Aries yesterday for the first time in 165 years. Then we've also got Mercury retrograde in Aries. Venus retrograde started in Aries. It's in late Pisces as of today of this recording. But that is a lot of Aries, and the sun is in Aries right now, which is that spring equinox energy in the northern hemisphere, which is initiator. Well, I've been saying it, especially on social media, and that is, this is not a normal Aries season. Okay. Usually early Aries season is about initiating things, getting after stuff, like starting to feel like you're ready to put things in the ground from a more ancestral perspective. But we've got all these retrogrades and eclipses, and it's just a weird energy. So what it's meant to do is to make us look within. It's meant to help us reflect. It's meant to help us look backwards and really think about what is the most authentic thing. Because all of these major planets are ingressing and passing over 0 degrees of Aries. We also even had a Venus star point at 2 degrees of Aries. And so these are big initiators and big awareness points from 0, especially to 2 degrees of Aries, which is what we call the creator degrees. So to have Neptune, which is the great visionary and the great dissolver, and then to have Saturn go over 0 degrees of Aries in May, and to have Venus and Mercury and eclipse, it is like, what do you want to create? This is truly the full card energy in tarot. What do you want to create? Now, the thing about Neptune, I try really hard. I've really tried to cultivate a healthy relationship with Neptunian energy over the last decade that I've been in this world. However, it's a hard one for me. I have Neptune in my first house too. Like I tell people, I could be so Neptunian. As a matter of fact, I have to wear a watch, because if I'm not wearing a watch, time is not real, which is another rant of mine I won't do today. But it is so important to understand how Neptune works on a grand scale. So Neptune is the great illusion. In yoga, we call it the Maya, or the veil. It is the veil that we decide on a soul level when we incarnate, when we take human shape, when our consciousness decides to incarnate in a human body and play by Earth's rules and be an Earth school, which is essentially what we do. We are choosing to undergo amnesia. We are choosing to forget. And that forgetting is Neptune, and that is called the Maya. So what happens when we come back is sometimes, I mean, if you're here and you're listening to Awaken, this is about awakening from the Maya. This, whether that's a Kundalini awakening, whether something you have a near-death experience, etc. Lots of people awaken in different ways, sometimes going down the Buddhist path, the yogic path, the Christian path, whatever it is. There is a contemplative path that is about self-awareness and consciousness, okay? So that's called awakening, or as some might call it, the woke mind virus. Hopefully you can see my big air quotes and feel my sarcasm. But we are meant to awaken, and we are meant to reclaim and redefine and start to live life on our terms and understand our innate divine creatorship, our creatrix energy or creator energy. It's what we literally come here to do, is to learn how to create and to tap into our goddess mystery self while we're here, and to play with matter. But oftentimes we stay asleep. And so what happens with Neptune is that Neptune on purpose clouds things so that we have to look very clearly and get under it to break the illusion. So a goddess that is closely tied to that would be like Kali, who takes her sword of truth and slices through the illusions. Another great archetype would be the Queen of Swords, especially in the Thoth deck. She's the Moksha card. So she is about liberating your mind and stepping into a higher understanding of truth. Okay. And that is to wake up. So as a person I have a complicated relationship with Neptune and Neptunian energy. I've also decided to live my life in devotion to helping people wake up and to live with compassionate consciousness, not just consciousness that eats us and devours us whole, which can happen. But I digress for today. Why I'm ranting about this right now is because that weird liminal foggy energy, which Neptune literally rules fog, and it feels unclear, that's Neptune moving into a new sign for the first time in somewhere between 14 to 16 years. Okay. So if you go back and you look at 2011, what was happening for you? So for me, Neptune had just moved into my third house, and it was also when I became a mom. So my son, my oldest son, is very Neptunian. He's Pisces rising. And I believe that that's also when I really decided to get onto my spiritual path and start communicating and studying it, because third house is your mind. And it's when I became extremely spiritual. Like everything that came out of my mouth has been spiritual. And Neptune rules spirituality as well. So, now Neptune's in my fourth house, and it's creating this more compassionate spiritual experience that is home. And that is very real for me. And so I digress about my own personal experiences, but I do invite you in for a moment to contemplate on what started to shift for you in 2011. Because the thing about Neptune is that it is the ruler of Pisces. So for the last 14 to 15 years, there's been a doubling down of that kind of lack of clarity, more spiritual, mystical awareness. Whereas now it's in Aries, and Aries is the first sign. And so it is spiritual action. It's the spiritual warrior. It's also taking initiative towards your dreams. And that is why, when I really felt this energy channeling through last year, the word that landed for me was architect. It's time to architect your reality. It's time to really, really, really own and initiate living life on your terms and not factory settings. And that is what I want to invite you guys into as you contemplate what's happening right now. All right. So remember, nothing really feels real yet because it hasn't solidified. Anytime that there is a planet at 0 degrees, it's in the liminal. It has no, directive energy one way or the other. It's just kind of in the standstill. Now, later this summer, Saturn, which is the concretizer, he's the one who makes things real. He's going to cross into Neptune. And then that is when visions and dreams and ideas are going to really start to take a foundation. They're going to start to have a root, because then shortly after that, Jupiter is going to be exalted in Cancer, and things start to move forward. It starts to feel easier in some ways. Okay. And we'll deal with that once we get into summer energy. For right now, I want to really hold you accountable to consider what is dissolving from your life and what is evolving in, what is leaving and what's locking in. Okay. So for me, I know that my spirituality through the lens of hardcore witchcraft is dissolving out of my life. And I'm grieved about it. I am. But I know that things that are more functional and practical and solution focused through the lens of the esoteric arts is what is solidifying. And I've tried to fight that for over 2 years now, and it's just making its way extremely known. And part of the North Node in Pisces is surrender and faith in something bigger than yourself. Okay. So think for a moment, what is dissolving out of my life? If you need to pull a card around that, ask your cards, a card that shows me what theme is dissolving out of my life. And then you can ask another card, a card that shows me what is starting to lock in. Now, remember, when Saturn crosses in later this summer, that's going to give a lot more clarity as to what is locking in. But there is a double-edged sword here. You can wait for things to lock in, but you can also understand that this is the creator degree, and you can start to weave in what you want to experience by bringing the reality to your own doorstep, living life on your terms, crafting a life that is what you envision and not what you're just receiving unconsciously. Right. And those are all the concepts and topics we talk about in my program, Awaken. And there's going to be upcoming workshops and stuff to get into that stuff that you'll hear at the end of this. But let's go ahead and get into the rest of what I think is important for April astrology, because what we've really been talking about is the past. And I want to make sure that I am equipping you guys with not just, the transmission of what has happened, but what is coming, right? So in the grander scale, right now in the wheel of the year, we are just past spring equinox, also known as Ostara, and we are now moving to Beltane, which is May 5th, the flower festival. And in the Northern Hemisphere, it is a time of fertility. And by fertility, it means that the earth is ready to receive seed. And by that meaning, it means that there's fertile ground. On the energetic level, it means, what do you want to plant this year? What kind of intention or hope do you want to plant and do you want to harvest once we get closer to the fall and winter? If you could pick one thing that you could put into the ground energetically and it would grow and it would nourish you, what would that one thing be? Right? What would that one thing be? Just start there. Okay. And that is like such a powerful way to help guide your awareness. That one thing, that one thing should help you make decisions for the remainder of the agricultural year, which is really until Imbolc, Yule, which is winter solstice. So I teach all of that in my container again. So this week on Friday, the 4th, which is 4/4, a day of foundation, we have our first quarter moon at 15 degrees of Cancer. Well, that first quarter moon is going to square the sun at 15 degrees of Aries exactly. So that means this week, at the time of this recording, we are working our way up into an exact square between the moon and the sun. And Friday is an important day. 4/4 is an important day because there are multiple Uranus, Mars, and Saturn sextiles and trines, which are pushes. Mars is now actively moving quickly. And what that means is that we're now being forced to look back at like January to late December as to what are some of the things that were percolating around there. You would want to look to where about 25 degrees of Cancer is in your natal chart to help you understand how that's going on. If you have no idea what that means, book a reading or a consult with me. I will teach you how to make that make sense. But essentially, what you really want to understand is that things are moving and they're supportive. Sextiles and trines are both supportive. With Uranus involved, there's change. Positive change is moving. And with Mars involved, there is definitely movement. Okay, things are moving, like there's willpower involved. That's very much the Chariot card in tarot. Things are picking up, they're gaining speed. And then lastly, with Saturn, it's like when we see Uranus and we see Mars in a positive aspect, it means that we're looking at limitations and we're breaking through limitations. Things that have been hard and have felt stuck are going to start to move. All right. Yay. We are looking for this. We are looking for things to feel like they're moving. We've had Mars in a water sign. We've got Saturn in a water sign. We've got the North Node in a water sign. We have got all of these, Mercury and Venus and the eclipses, like all just like drowning in emotion. Okay. Just a lot of contemplation. And it's like by mid-April, it's go time. Things are moving again. So you want to recognize you don't have that much more time to be contemplative and try to rework some things, because by mid-April, things are moving, guys. Okay. So our big, aspects that I'm looking at is when we have on April 7th, Venus is going to come into conjunction with Saturn at 25 degrees of Pisces. The north and south node are in that mix too. So there's some sort of like concrete. There's some sort of commitment or something that gets tested. Saturn tests things. He brings hardship to test, whether or not something is strong enough or a person has mastered something enough to be known as a master. So it's a challenge that has an opportunity to strengthen and get more concrete, or to show weaknesses in a foundation and then they fall. Okay. That is on the 7th. And that's also the same day that Mercury stations direct at 26 degrees. So they're all in that real tight conjunction right there. Expect for there to be miscommunications. Expect for there to be challenge, because that's what it's there to do. It's there to test whether or not the foundation is strong enough, because the North Node is involved. It's meant to support you. Okay. And so that's next week though. The next day, Venus will sextile Uranus, so it creates change. So that whole little bracket of like the 7th and 8th of April is important. There's some sort of challenge that's going to happen around 25 degrees of Pisces, and it's meant to test the foundations of things, okay, and see if it's going to get stronger or if it's going to fall apart. Now, on April 12th, we have a full moon, and that is going to be at 23 degrees of Libra. And that moon is going to be, all the full moons are a big deal, but this is our first full moon in 2 years that hasn't been an eclipse. So it's a checkpoint for sure. And it's going to square Mars. So, Mars is going to have moved significantly at that point, because that's like 2 weeks from now. But it is definitely still going to be in an active square. So it's going to bring some challenge around what we're willing to fight for. Okay. Especially in regards to things around our home, our security, and our sense of family. Okay. But that one's definitely starting to percolate. And it will also be in a conjunction to Chiron exactly. So there is just some sense of wounding around this moon. And, it's only 5 days after we have Venus conjunct Saturn and the North Node. And like, there's a lot going on there. All right. So I need you guys to be prepared for that moon. When there is a Chiron aspect in there, something hurts. All right. And usually in Libra, it's relational, but it's in Aries, so it's about the self. So there's some sense of independence. There's some sense of self that brings up wounding that is going to challenge us. And we're really meant to look back at the last 2 years to help guide us, because the North Node just challenged us in all things independence and self-worth in Aries, of like, are we going to do what we said we're going to do? Are we going to lose ourselves? Are we going to become doormats and people pleasers in this situation? Are we going to assert our needs? Are we going to stand on business when it comes to me and healing myself, etc.? So just so you know, that full moon is going to have a lot of emotion behind it. Venus will be direct, Saturn will be direct, Mercury will be direct, and it's just going to be intense, because Mercury is also going to be squaring Pluto at that time. And it's definitely going to be moving. Mars will also be at 27 degrees of Cancer that day. So, okay, our next big aspect, Venus goes direct on April 12th, which is the same day as that full moon. I don't want to forget. So lots of energy there, guys. And then on April 17th, Mercury is going to conjunct Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries for the first time in 165 years. This is what we would call a synodic cycle. So for the next 14 to 16 years, Neptune will be, the sun will be going over Neptune, and we'll be able to start tracking that 14 to 16 year cycle of what that means. But that is an important aspect, because the sun is really going to highlight like what is the theme of this, and that theme is going to be here for about 15 years. So we should pay attention. And then as we get further into the month, our next big aspects is going to be April 20th, when the sun squares Mars, which is still working its way back out of its shadow period. So it's going to be around 3 degrees of Leo. So it's not going to exactly be back at its degree yet. So we could really look to like middle of December to understand what that problem was, that challenge was. And then on the 23rd, the sun is going to square Pluto. So we get 4 of those every year. And I mean, this is a tight period of potential conflict. I just want you guys to know that. And the new moon is going to be at 7 degrees of Taurus on April the 27th. And that moon is going to be almost exactly opposite Pluto, still direct to 3 degrees of Aquarius. So it'll be very, very intense at that time period. Mars is going to be at 4 degrees of Leo. And the sun and the moon are going to be in conjunction. Those that happens at a new moon, they're both together. Uranus will have already ticked into 26 degrees of Taurus. We haven't seen that since August of last year. And then we will have Mercury will be fully direct. Yeah, Saturn will be at 27 degrees of Pisces. And Black Moon Lilith is going to be in play here, guys. So Black Moon Lilith will be at 3 degrees of Scorpio. And Pluto is at 3 degrees of Aquarius. And Mars will be at 4 degrees of Leo. And that whole thing gets locked in because of the sun and the moon being at 7 degrees. I'm just noticing now, yeah, that's a big, grand, fixed cross and square. That is going to be a very intense new moon for sure. We will talk about that in transmission as we get closer. But what that means is that there is some sense of feeling trapped. Like there's some sense of feeling like you're trying to reclaim your energy and take back your power and get free in some way. So just be mindful of that because, you know, Lilith, she will burn her life down to get free and everybody around her to get free too. That's not how she starts. She starts very kind and compassionate and tries to be very equal. And then eventually she will absolutely grow wings and fly away. So just keep that in mind. She is the story of how we think we're stepping into something to get free, but instead it's entangling us or ensnaring us if we don't stay in our personal power, also known as your sovereignty. So that is at the end of April. Again, we'll get to that more when we get there. It's about a month from now, little over a month from now. Sorry, a little less than a month from now. But that will be active once we get there. So I hope that this has been helpful for you in regards to April astrology and how to apply it in a functional and practical way. My goal is to provide insight on the stars and the astrological weather, as well as your personal makeup, and then what the hell to do about it. You know, like we've got enough burden of awareness. One of my life mantras is don't tell me shitty news if you're not going to tell me what to do about it. I've committed my life to making sure that if I'm going to provide insight, I'm also going to provide solutions and support at the same time. So I hope that this was helpful for you. Please make sure that you check out my description box below. I would love to book a reading with you. I have a whole new thing, which is a new client special. It's a 60-minute reading. And I'm super excited because it feels new. And I would love to help you kind of get into the world of the esoteric arts and reclamation work. The other thing is that if you have any interest in any of my programs, make sure you check the description box below. The best thing to do, especially if you don't know me yet, like I said, book a reading, or you can book a free consult where you can tell me what's your problems, like what's going on, and see if it's a good fit. I'm a pretty genuine person. I will let you know if it feels like a good fit, and you'll probably know too. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys. Please like and share and subscribe. I'm really working on my marketing, my messaging, my consistency, my visibility this year. That's like my big push for myself. And so the more that you guys share this work, the more it supports me and my boys. And I'm infinitely grateful for all of the support that you guys give me and have given me. So again, thank you guys so much. And until next time, see ya.